And now a very special program, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the story behind the masterpiece.
When you think of the most popular character from literature for children, who do you think of?
Think, think, think.
Here's a clue. He's a bear.
Winnie the Pooh?
The stories about Winnie the Pooh and his friends in the 100-Acre Wood have become beloved classics, translated into dozens of languages and adored by children around the world. For them, he's the lovable, huggable friend who shares their innocence and endless curiosity. For adults, Pooh represents the most admirable traits of childhood, a perception of a world filled with simplicity and beauty, and the loyalty of a steadfast friendship.
Silly old bear.
When Walt Disney began plans for an animated version of Winnie the Pooh in 1961, he realized that children in Britain and Europe were more familiar with these stories than children in America. If that was the case then, it is far from true today. Winnie the Pooh toys, games, and the cuddly stuffed animals are many a child's best friend. This is only appropriate, since that is how Winnie the Pooh came to be. This stuffed bear was a gift to A.A. Milne's son, Christopher Robin, on his first birthday. Edwin Bear was renamed Winnie the Pooh based on a Canadian black bear at the London Zoo named Winnipeg and a swan named Pooh. Mr. Milne was a successful author and playwright, and the friendship between Christopher Robin and Pooh was the inspiration for a set of verses for children. These stories also featured other characters from Christopher Robin's nursery, including the timid piglet, the ever-gloomy donkey named Eeyore, and the constantly bouncing tiger called Tigger. A frequent visitor to the Milne family's Sussex estate was English artist Ernest H. Shepard. His affectionate sketches of Christopher Robin with his menagerie of stuffed toys were the perfect complement for the Pooh stories. In 1924, A.A. Milne's first verses were combined as a book, titled When We Were Very Young. It was an immediate success in Britain, and would be the first of 4 Winnie the Pooh books that would be published over the next 4 years. The adventures in these books started out as bedtime stories told to Christopher Robin, but soon they were being read to boys and girls everywhere. A continent away, Walt Disney was one of those parents who fondly recall sharing these stories with their children.
Back when Walt Disney's daughters were small, Mrs. Disney used to read stories to the daughters in the evening. She'd read them the Mary Poppins stories, she'd read them the Winnie the Pooh stories. And Walt Disney used to hear the laughter coming out of his children's bedroom, and he knew they were really enjoying these stories, and so he remembered that.
Walt called us one day and he says, I have an idea about Winnie the Pooh. We ought to do that. Do you guys know Winnie the Pooh? And I says, well, I remember hearing about this book, this story when I was stationed in England during the war. And Walt says, yeah, oh yeah, these are good stories. We can make a little feature out of these.
Walt acquired the rights to the Winnie the Pooh books in 1961 and started plans for a musical animated feature-length film to be produced and directed by Disney veteran Wolfgang Reitherman.
Wooly Reitherman was really the key factor behind these pictures. He, in a large way, was responsible for the art direction on it too, starting with the book stuff, like having Christopher Robin swinging on the page with all the printing. So you're always aware that this is a book that the kids can read and something that they can get involved in. He had Walt's spirit in him, and Wooly never gave up trying to make things better.
The talented songwriting team of Richard M. and Robert B. Sherman are renowned for their songs for Mary Poppins in 1964 and The Jungle Book in 1967. Walt personally enlisted them to work their magic for Winnie the Pooh.
Dick and Bob were like a song and dance team. Dick would get on the piano and play the little melody, and Bob would come up with a lyric to it. Dick was a real showman, and I think Walt really loved it.
He never, ever wanted us to, in any of his projects, just write a song to be sung. He wanted a song to move the story forward.
I'm just a little black rain cloud.
Walt wanted the songs for Winnie the Pooh to be eminently singable and very simple, and yet try to be original and whimsical. The breakthrough came when our very first song, we knew we were going to write a title song. And so we decided to set the scene and make it very gentle and sweet. And it was kind of like a love song to this whole idea of being young and believing in little teddy bears and little piglets.
And it went something like this.
Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, chubby little cubby all stuffed with fluff. He's Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, willy-nilly silly old bear.
Pooh, of course, was basically a honey lover. He loved to eat honey and guzzle lots and lots of good sweet things. And so he would exercise for different reasons.
He would try to build up his appetite.
Yeah, he did it just for the opposite reason than we would do it. He wanted to put on weight, not lose weight. Thusly, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. When I up, down and touch the ground, it puts me in the mood. Up, down and touch the ground, in the mood for food.
I am stout, round, and I have found, speaking poundage-wise, I improve my appetite when I exercise.
For many thousands of people, the characters from the Winnie the Pooh stories were defined by Ernest Shepard's charming book illustrations. Walt realized the value of staying consistent with his audience's childhood memories of these tales and insisted that his artists adhere as much as possible to the original designs of the characters.
Actually, there was a little bit of a conflict of whether we should use Shepard's illustrations or come up with our own. Walt decided, no, we'd come up with our own design of Winnie the Pooh, not getting away completely from Shepard's illustrations, which are beautiful things, but we had to make them Disney.
Well, we all loved the Shepard drawings when we started on the picture, and still do. But you can't take something like that is drawn only in certain views. We have to be able to draw the character in every position, every view. So we had to design our own characters. We decided to keep the eyes flexible so that the character could close and open the eyes, they could raise their eyelids, they could move their mouth around and their cheeks a little bit so you get the feeling of an expression, but they couldn't look like this, or around or up that way, like Mickey could. We had to do it by turning the head, and actually it was better because it made him look more doll-like.
Walt was concerned that they would have more charm than substance, and he wanted to be sure that we captured the story, that we captured a strength in the characters so that they would exist on their own. They didn't rely on you having read the story.
Once the designs of the characters were approved, model sheets were created so each animator had a reference for how the characters were to be drawn.
And he's got a fairly big body here, and this is his little red outfit here, little red dress, and the material itself is very delicate, very fragile in a sense. You don't want to make big guffaw laughs with the material. It had to be done very gently and whimsically.
Who are you?
I'm Pooh.
Oh, Pooh. Sure. What's a Pooh?
You're sitting on one.
Winnie the Pooh is very straight. He's like a little child. He's just totally honest and says it just the way it happens, the way children do. They don't have any hidden meanings.
Is anybody at home?
No.
Bother. Isn't there anybody here at all?
Nobody.
Somebody there. Because somebody must have said nobody. Happy Wednesday, Piglet.
Piglet's so sympathetic. He's so little. and he's always trying to be such a nice guy and trying to get along, trying not to show that he's scared when he's up in the air like a kite, you know, and that he does get panicky, but it's always still a kind of restrained thing.
Oh no! Stop! Hello, Rabbit!
Rabbit, he was always frustrated. You know, he was just a worrywart about everything.
Honey? Oh no! I'm Tigger. T-I-double-G-R. That spells Tigger.
Tigger, of course, was always kind of fun because he was no cares in the world. He just went out there and he just did whatever he wanted to. And of course, he always got into trouble, and that was fun.
Some bouncing, huh? Say, how did this tree get so high? Hello, Mrs. Kanga, ma'am.
Some of the traits I tried to bring to Kanga and Roo, which was the mother-son relationship, and trying to think of Roo as a 5-year-old boy.
Is your sweater warm enough?
Yes, Mother.
We wanted to have, and Walt wanted to have, one kind of an American character that would also bring in the youngsters in America. And Gopher is a very American animal.
Somebody call for an excavation expert. I'm not in the book, but I'm at your service. Gopher. The name is McCard.
There was an effort to put some comedy in, and that was the Gopher.
First thing to be done is get rid of that bear. He's gumming up the whole project.
It was very much like the Badger and Lady and the Tramp. In fact, it was a real takeoff of it.
We were pleased with him, except that we were very nervous about it, because after all, there are Pooh-ophiles. There are people that really adore Winnie the Pooh, particularly in England, and we didn't want to offend anyone. So Larry Clemens came up with this idea. He said, how about if he pops up out of a gopher hole and he says, I'm not in the book, but I'm at your service. Gopher's the name. I mean, it was just one of those wonderful, spontaneous things. And everybody said, absolutely right, I'm not in the book. Double meaning. Not in the phone book, but he's not in the A.A. Milne book either.
Dash it all, he's gone.
After all, he's not in the book, you know.
To complement these characters, the overall art design for the film attempted to also keep the feel of Shepard's line-drawn backgrounds as well. Most of these chalk and watercolor concept pieces have never before been seen by the public.
We started using backgrounds on 101 Dalmatians that had painted in flatter areas but had lines, ink lines, outlining the shapes. I think it was used to advantage on Pooh by just having the outline of the shapes in the background.
The story to be animated is broken down shot by shot in drawings called storyboards. These allow the staff to study the flow of the story and to see where problems might exist.
We had about 2/3 of what we considered a feature in storyboards. We were in development. Some parts of it were actually in animation, some of the early areas. But we were just really thinking in terms of a total animated feature. And one day we had this major meeting with all the people involved in the Winnie the Pooh project, and Walt said, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to platform this property. We're not just going to put out a feature, because the American public, particularly the children in America, are not familiar with Winnie the Pooh at all. So actually what he did was he sectioned it into 3 sections. And so we were all kind of like surprised and perturbed about it. We said, well, you know, featurette, why? And he says, you'll see, once we have people aware of the Winnie the Pooh characters, the next time around it'll be much, much bigger. And it'll become classic. It'll become a masterpiece. You watch and see.
Once the story and characters are approved, and before the animation can begin, the dialogue is recorded. Casting the voices for this stuffed menagerie brought out many of Hollywood's most interesting voices.
Walt always wanted this believable business. He wanted to transport the audience to some make-believe place that they could never go themselves. And that's what the right voice does for you.
Oh, bother.